I'm just going to read a few headlines for you. Take a listen to this. The fall of the FTX king of crypto. Crypto giant FTX collapses into bankruptcy. Funds vanish at bankrupt crypto exchange. Probe underway. FTX crash. Worse than Theranos, worse than Madoff. So what is going on here? And why should it matter to you, even if you never plan to invest a dime in cryptocurrency? Well, let's peel back the layers. Now, if I had to explain, just in one sentence, what the collapse of FTX is all about, I'd probably put it this way. One of the largest cryptocurrency exchanges in the world, FTX, recently announced it was going bankrupt, and a lot of people could lose a lot of money. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, right? But now let me add one thought. FTX was actually caught in its own downward spiral. A combination of money mismanagement and a complete evaporation of consumer confidence. And that, not the bankruptcy itself, but the loss of trust, could have huge implications for the crypto space as a whole.
Cryptocurrencies are falling to lows not seen in a couple of weeks. Well, yeah. The FTX token has fallen by double digits. The head of rival exchange Binance saying his firm would liquidate its holdings of that token.
Is this the Lehman moment for crypto? That's the question some in the industry are now asking, as leading cryptocurrency exchange FTX faces bankruptcy.
FTX ran into big trouble this week, and rival Binance backed out of a bailout deal. Bitcoin and the entire crypto sector felt the heat.
It's been a rough weekend for the failed crypto exchange FTX. Within hours of FTX filing for bankruptcy on Friday, there was what appears to be a hack of the exchange.
Okay, so let's start by explaining a few things, and then we'll kind of get into what it all means. So first off, what is FTX? So FTX is short for Futures Exchange. It's an online cryptocurrency marketplace where people, they buy and they sell things like Bitcoin and Ethereum. So, you know, if I want to invest or sell off my crypto, I go to a place like this. And it's one of the biggest such exchanges in the world that at its peak, I think it was valued at something like $32 billion US. Take a look at this guy. He's the one who runs it, Sam Bankman-Fried. But get to know him by his initials, SBF. That's how he's more commonly known. He's 30 years old. Parents were professors at Stanford. He himself went to MIT. And he eventually got into full-time trading, even founding his own crypto trading company called Alameda Research, which will become important in just a moment. But what you really need to know here is that when he founded FTX just a few years ago, it really quickly shot to superstar status. Big investors and major financial companies, they backed it, and it was as mainstream as crypto gets. There was a whole Super Bowl ad dedicated to FTX. That was a big coup for them. Tom Brady also did a commercial with them.
I'm getting into crypto.
And venture capitalist Kevin O'Leary, former Dragon, made the rounds talking up his investment in FTX.
If there's ever a place I could be that I'm not going to get in trouble, it's going to be at FTX.
Right, and we all know how that turned out, right? And so there was even a deal worth $135 million to rename the Miami Heat Stadium FTX Arena. But at the beginning of November, things got really messy for FTX. So a crypto news site called CoinDesk, they published a report citing a private document that raised pretty serious questions about how interconnected SBF's two companies actually were. Because recall, we have FTX, we also have Alameda Research. And make sure I spell this right, Alameda Research. And it suggested that a big chunk of Alameda's assets, billions of dollars, were tied up in a digital currency called FTX. Now, the actual acronym isn't important, but you sort of have to realize two things. This is fine, except that one, the actual value of a digital currency, that's pretty inconsistent, right? Like they're often more like stocks than currency. So how much is any of it actually worth? It's sort of like if I brag about being a millionaire and then I show you my holdings in Bitcoin. Like, sure, maybe I'm a millionaire today, but who knows if I'd still be one tomorrow. But here's the kicker. FTT is FTX's coin. FTX customers are actually encouraged to trade in FTT to get discounts on the site. So the way I saw it put recently, a big chunk of Alameda's business is actually FTX's, and I quote, FTX's centrally controlled and printed out of thin air tokens. And that would ultimately lock SBF's crypto empire into its own kind of incestuous death spiral. Because here's what happened, according to reporting from both CoinDesk and the Wall Street Journal. So FTX loaned Alameda a whole whack of money to prop it up, something like $10 billion. As collateral to secure its various debts, Alameda put up billions of dollars in FTT. And you see the huge problem here? Because if, for whatever reason, people lose faith in FTX, the price of FTT goes down. Again, think of it like stock. But if the price of FTT goes down, the collateral for Alameda's loans are worth less, which increasingly makes those loans look super sketchy, like someone who takes out a big mortgage on a house, but that is falling apart. Like that makes FTX look bad, which can cause FTT to lose value. So you have FTT going down, you have the quality of this loan going down, and now the cycle has become this sort of full-blown implosion. And there's another kicker, because yeah, like we're not done here with this story. The part of this story that makes the whole thing blow up. So according to the Wall Street Journal, the money that FTX used to prop up Alameda in the first place, that was client money. And that was money that maybe it should have been keeping safe, like the way a bank is supposed to keep your money safe in case, you don't just want to put money in, but you also sometimes want to take money out. The fear was that Alameda's problem, its money problem, could soon become FTX's problem. So when a rival crypto exchange called Binance, which held hundreds of millions of dollars of FTT, decided to sell all of it, that caused a huge run on FTX. Everybody wanted to get their money out all at the same time, and FTX didn't have enough to cover the withdrawals. The rest is history. So it's essentially like a good old-fashioned run on a bank, right? Except when it comes to crypto exchanges, it's like a bank without rules, much less oversight, much less disclosure, and no monetary insurance for customers. And that is why customers in this space can be so skittish about the whole thing. Like if you think about it, if there's even the slightest chance that your holdings could suddenly evaporate to zero, the smart move is often to take your money out of the market and just put it back in later, minus some fees if everything blows over. But what you have there is a system with no trust and that maybe doesn't actually work. Now, at this stage of the game, FTX, Alameda, and all of the affiliated companies have all declared bankruptcy. Sam Bankman-Fried has apologized on Twitter for his poor decisions. A lengthy thread starting with this tweet. Yeah, says a lot, right? He resigned as CEO, lost his entire $16 billion fortune overnight, and he's under investigation by the US SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. But I still have a lot of questions about what all of this means for the future of crypto. So we're going to hear now from Graye Williams, who is a tech writer, a podcaster, our go-to on everything crypto. Have a listen.
Hello, my friend. Graye, it's been such a long time since we last talked.
It's really good to see you.
Tell me you're not just absolutely glued to this story. I mean, the FTX collapse is just wild, right?
It is. I mean, I've been on the beach here with my AirPods in, staring at my phone. My friends, my partner, they're all very irritated with me, but it's hard to look away.
Is this the kind of inflection point, the turning point where we're going to see regulation come into effect in this crypto exchange space that would hopefully in the future prevent this sort of thing from happening again?
I think there's no one out there that's going to deny that this is going to be a big moment in crypto history. Looking at how regulation would work on something like this, I mean, this type of what looks like embezzlement, we've seen this happen in traditional markets that are regulated.
Sure.
And The weak point here is, the idea of trust. Hearing SBF and hearing him say that, these two things are run separately, not being able to see the balance sheets, and then seeing the balance sheets and seeing that there is something awry here. Regulation can be put in place, but these systems move so quickly that it's going to be hard to catch this without having more in-depth knowledge of how the plumbing works here. So looking at how this is going to regulate, it's going to have to be built with knowledge of crypto. Legislators are going to have a hard time doing it by themselves.
So that's a fair point. But is part of the solution just have something to do with insurance, like offering monetary insurance, if that's even possible? Because like the only reason this collapse happened is because everyone pulled their money out all at once. And then the only reason people pull all their money out at once is because they lost trust in the system. But you compare that to, like, if I go to any of the big 5 banks in Canada and I deposit $100,000 and then the bank fails, like, I'm insured, right? CDIC gives me that money back.
Yeah, and that's something that I think that really works with traditional banks. Crypto actually has this built in, and it's a problem that people aren't using it right now, and that is the visibility to see the wallets that are used as reserves. Looking at how FTX and Alameda were working, they were using customer funds to do things. Now, there was no transparency to those wallets, but the system actually has transparency built in. If you know which wallets are used for this reserve, you can see those reserves at all times. Would a mandated insurance system be better for retail investors? Absolutely. Yes, it would. Is that something that we can put in place easily? It's very hard to do considering how these organizations exist outside of countries, outside of the real world.
Right, yeah, and FTX was operating in the Bahamas, right? So that makes regulatory oversight that much harder. But I'm trying to figure out, so what is the takeaway here? Because is it that everyone just has to do their own due diligence and make sure, sort of a buyer beware situation, or is there's some other takeaway here?
That's something that I think it's a conversation that's been happening in crypto for a very long time, and it's starting to feel like a cop-out, right? Do your own research. DYOR is the one thing that crypto enthusiasts will tell everyone, like, here's this great new token, DYOR, as if that alleviates them from the responsibility of getting you involved in a scam.
Right.
And so the average retail investor, you've got a 9-to-5 job, right? You're looking at this as part of your investment portfolio. We've got folks like Kevin O'Leary who have staff who are versed in these things, and they didn't see this coming.
Yeah.
So saying to ordinary Canadians, like, do your own research, oh man, that makes me sick. Like, I feel ill thinking about it. So, if we're going to say do your own research, maybe that's where legislation can start as well, which is the transparency into how these organizations run, where the money is, has to be uniform, has to be standardized.
Graye Williams, we will stay tuned as always. Always good to chat with you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And one more note on this story, lest you think that this is primarily a story about one crypto exchange. The ripple effect has actually been pretty dramatic, not just for this question of what comes next, but also for existing players of all kinds, like crypto coins themselves taking big tumbles in price. Talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum. And remember, FTX wasn't even the biggest fish out there. It was the number 2. The number 1 is an exchange called Binance. What changes for them?